and as far as growth and numbers and things like that. So in that respect, I'm not too concerned, but I do feel that those additional costs will be directly passed from the developer through the building, through your builder, right to the new homeowner. So it's just always to be cognizant of that. The other point that I'd like to make is that studies have shown, through my Planning Association research, that if you don't have a very strong nexus between your increase and the price point and the need, and you can draw a direct correlation between the two, you're opening yourself up for some litigation there. So I would urge the council to make sure that that price of almost $2,000 increase, that's a pretty hefty lift, that that can be justified in the numbers there, because as it was presented, it was just like we were suggested we could go to this price point, and maybe not going to that full price point is the justifiable number in that instance. So thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thanks, Erica. Appreciate your comments tonight. Further public testimony on this item? Further public comments? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for discussion or a motion to get us started. Andy.
I would move to approve resolution number 19-50, and I believe we are a resolution approving amendments to the rates and policies for impact fees assessed by the city of Whitefish.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Hildner. Further discussion? Andy.
I guess just one quick comment to Erica's point, and you're correct. I mean, it is something that gets passed on in the affordability in terms of housing being built, but it's the conundrum of if we don't pay for the plant out of impact fees, and we pay for it solely out of monthly fees, which also affects the affordability of housing. And we already have extremely high utility rates in this community now. And I mean, I've said this before, but I have a rental house, and I mean, the water and sewer bill, there's $130 a month, and that affects affordability of something. So yeah, we have to pick it up somewhere, and unfortunately, this is one of the ways we have to do that, so.
I have a question for Adam, or Dana for that matter, or actually it would be Wendy. I think we need to pass this tonight, but my question or my concern does lie with our affordable housing program and what this impact fee, even though we're not going to the maximum defensible amount. So just so the public is aware, we technically, based on analysis, could easily go to $11,919. I would hope that the council would consider the minimum increase that would bring the total impact fees to about $99.44 rather than the maximum defensible. My question, Adam, is are we looking at impact fee, quote, waivers or other incentives that will help offset these costs to developers who elect or are providing affordable housing?
That is something that we've talked about a number of times. One of the hard parts is that when you come up with an impact fee, it's governed by state law, and it has to go through a huge process where we have to hire third-party engineering firms and accounting firms and everything else to go through to get us to the maximum defensible amounts. So when you establish something that needs to apply evenly to everybody, we need to be evenly applying that to everybody. Otherwise, you might get some community saying, or some developer saying, well, wait a minute. You know, you did this, that, and not the other. And although I do think there probably is a scenario where we could rebate some of that, it almost seems easier if we come at it from a different direction, whether it be through grants or things like that. There was even a suggestion made here a couple of weeks ago to where we could take a portion of the impact fees and apply it towards some down payment assistance programs. So I think there's a number of different ways where we could skin the cat, maybe not the best analogy, but at any rate, I think there are ways to do it, but I want to be careful that on something that's so governed by state law that we start messing with it in order to achieve some local objectives when I think there might be a better way to get to the same result.
And I know in the committee meetings we did discuss, rather than waiving or reducing the impact fee for affordable housing, that perhaps the full fee would be recouped, yet we'd reimburse the developer through our tax increment financing fund because housing was identified in our urban renewal plan back in 1987. Are we still thinking that despite the fact that our TIF expires in 11 months?
Pretty much the TIF expiring in 11 months, Ixnade, doing that with that funding source. Now, if we could come up with another funding source, which is what the funding work group is working on, that might be a way where we could essentially grant money back, and it would essentially offset a portion of impact fees for those providing affordable housing.
Okay, great, thanks. Further comments on the motion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion carries unanimously as well, Michelle. Thanks, Dana. We'll move quickly on to item 7A. You have Adam's written report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for Adam on his manager's reports? Any questions? Adam, anything additional to report on from July 10 through 15?
Yeah, I will report that we did have a meeting with DEQ last Thursday. There were some requests for some more information, which I believe we got to them today, Craig? Was it today, possibly?
It was supposed to go out this afternoon. I haven't checked my email.
Okay, so the information is supposed to get to them. I know they had somebody that was going to be out of town until Wednesday, but we do anticipate them getting back to us by the end of the week. So hopefully we have some positive results from our efforts on that.
What were the sticking points still with DEQ? I mean, I know we presented them a whole host of information and data and justification for where we're at.
Yeah, there's a whole host of sticking points that, of course, we don't think are really sticking points. But Craig probably would be a better one to answer that question.
Opinion of DEQ, based on our evaluation, they tend to disagree with some of our, well, I shouldn't say they disagree. They don't feel that we've provided enough information to justify our fire flow deviation. So we've run some additional models, we've done some additional hydrant testing, and we've also done just some additional narrative to kind of back that up. We've also provided for them additional growth parameters to show the number of dedicated lots that we've already committed water service to, and how long that's going to take to, based on past growth projections, to actually tie into water. And we're also kind of modifying the deviation to include some additional language with respect to the process that we're going through to add capacity and storage. So really, it's just it's a data transfer. We're just giving them more information, but basically telling them the same thing.
Okay. Well, I know we came out of left field, and along with your day-to-day responsibilities, I know this has been a big burden on many of you, so thanks for your diligence.
And I think that's the hard part is, I mean, it really kind of came out of left field. And it was something I pointed out at the meeting, that when they decided to put a moratorium on certain developments, they had no data, none. And then to get out of it, they want mountains and mountains and mountains of data. But I want to applaud Craig and staff and Neil for all of the efforts that have been put into this. And hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have a favorable ruling on this, much like we have with the wastewater treatment plant. Yep. We know we need a new one. We just need time to put it all together so that we can put it in place. We're just asking for the same thing on the water. We need some things we need to address. Give us some time. We'll take care of it. So.
Okay. Anything else, Adam?
That's all I have.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 8A. We have enclosed in the packet the letter authored by Doug Peppemeyer with TD&H Engineering regarding the condition that was placed by the council, which was condition number 21 on the preliminary plat approval for the Mountain Brook subdivision at our last meeting. Certainly, if you have questions for Doug, please feel free to call him up to the podium. But I think the information that's presented is pretty straightforward. I guess I would ask, actually, Doug, the condition was pretty clear. And obviously we read your response. Would you mind just coming up and maybe informing or educating the council on what types of challenges or perhaps changes to the design that would result if this was to remain a requirement? Then we'll go with questions.
So, Doug Petmeyer, TD&H Engineering, 450 Corporate Drive, Kalispell, Montana. Yeah, and again, kind of my, I guess, basis for the question back was, you know, we did get the condition, and I think most of what we're looking for is just a little clarification on what exactly council is looking for. But my kind of underlying overall question was, what are we really trying to accomplish? We do have a 10-foot newly constructed, I believe it's 10-foot out on 2nd Street, Craig, is that correct? All the way out to, you know, the big uses, which are the dog park, the armory. And so the way the condition read, it was kind of to address safety concerns with Armory Road. And you do have, you know, with the new road from Mountain Brook, we have sidewalks both sides as required by the city. It's pretty unique. If not, I'm not sure if there's ever been a multi-use path that's part of a subdivision. There's other issues with Armory that we've discussed. I think we're all aware that, you know, at some point that road will need to be updated. But I think putting a multi-use path in there, I'm not sure what we were really accomplishing. But one of the things that came out of it when we started putting the section in, if you look at the 10-foot path, we get reduced down to 5 feet. And if you look at the public works standard, you have to have a minimum of 6-foot boulevard. Now, that's not the end of the world. I think there's some workarounds, and those are those sketches that I sent to you. We're just looking for, if we're gonna do this multi-use path, what would you guys or Public Works wanna see with that? Because you could go with, if you read actually the path can be reduced to 8 foot with Public Works approval, then that makes a 7-foot boulevard. Everything's fine, which is an easy fix. The 6-foot requirement, I believe, comes from street trees, gives them enough room to grow. So I don't think we want to do like a variance for a 5-foot boulevard. I don't think that's the right thing. Then the other thing is aesthetically, is it going to look weird when you have a 10-foot boulevard on one side and a 7-foot on the other? So that was that last section.
Section 3.
Yeah, section 3. My assistant will help me. Thank you, Bailey. No. So this is what I would, if we're gonna do the path, I would think you could do the full 10-foot path, and then you could do 7.5 on both sides, so it looks uniform. And you'd have your 5-foot sidewalk on the other side there. It's just a little unique that it would be just off center is all it would be. But you're not gonna see that in real world, but just as long as Craig or Public Works doesn't have an issue with that. So I think there's solutions to it. Again, I just kind of wanted to pose the question back, what are we, I guess, accomplishing with, because you're gonna have a bike path kind of to nowhere. It's gonna go to Armory no matter, and you're gonna be, once you get to Armory, you're gonna have the same problem. So the developer's not opposed to this. I just wanted to get a little bit more feedback of is that what we really want to do? And if so, it's a condition. So,
Okay.
and I guess the only other thing I threw in there too, it can be pavement or concrete. It wasn't specified if you wanted either or.
Richard, since you added the condition, would you
Yeah,
like
that
to
was my
speak to that?
condition, as you know, Doug. And
Yep.
I get what I was thinking about. The south side of 93 is the shared use path, but that is 8 feet. It's not a 10-foot concrete. So I would be perfectly comfortable with 8 feet, but concrete, because that's our normal sidewalk standard in the city is concrete. So that's.
So that would be street section 2, the typical that he provided?
I think there were 10 feet in all of them, but that would be,
I think you could take 2 and just make it 8 feet.
So then you'd still have not a symmetrical boulevard. I mean, you'd have 10 foot on the one side and 7 feet on the other side, if that matters.
I don't think it matters. Personally.
I voted against it, so don't look at me.
Come on, Andy.
Well, I guess I mean, if it were my choice, I'd say eliminate the condition because, I mean, I understand what Richard's looking for, but if we think about the amount of bicycle traffic that's gonna go through there, and then we also think about the amount of car traffic that's gonna go through there, I don't see that there's any issues with bicycles being on the road there. Bicycles are on the road all over town all the time. I ride my bike it's not like it's gonna be a heavily utilized spot. There won't be a lot of car traffic there, so there wouldn't be a lot of bicycle vehicle interaction is my guess. Pedestrian access was provided for on both sides of the street from end to end of the subdivision via the original plan, and that's why I voted against it. And as Doug had pointed out in his thing, we do have a shared path that goes all the way up East Second on the south side of the road there and gets you to the dog park and gets you to Dodger Lane, which then gets you over to Armory Road. So that's why I voted against it, so, but
I would just add to that, Dana, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we discussed the resort tax priorities list, you indicated that Armory is probably in the next 10 years, if I'm not mistaken, 10 to 12.
Probably 5 to 6,
5 to
according to the
6.
CIP and the priority list. But the Resort Tax Committee, the chair just requested that we add that to the discussions at our meeting on Wednesday.
Okay.
And we're re-looking at the priority list. So I think that enough attention has been brought to it that they're going to look at that project specifically.
And I would imagine any street project connecting Second to Armory Park itself on Armory Road would include a shared use path.
Yeah, according to Craig.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is
Yes,
shown.
yes, yes.
It's also included in the Connect Whitefish Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan.
Okay,
The
so
shared
really
use
what
path
this
on
is,
Armory.
what this would buy us, this condition, is a 5-year stopgap. Yeah. So in order to, the condition stands unless we have someone who voted in the affirmative bring it up for reconsideration, is my understanding, correct?
Sure, that is correct. And,
Which would be yourself, Ryan, or Melissa.
right. I'm,
just a point of order, I think that we'd have to bring the entire subdivision back. And that could be anybody, because we voted for it unanimously at that point.
Okay,
So-
yeah.
And then we would amend the conditions once it's back on the table.
Okay, so if it's laid back on the table
I believe
through,
that's correct.
it'll work for our purposes. So if there is a motion to lay this back on the table, it would require a motion by any of one of you sitting here this evening.
I would make a motion to reconsider WPP 19-09.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Counselor Hartman. Any further discussion? And we need to vote on that. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
does that include the current condition 21? If it does, then I'll have a friendly to go with it.
It
You
does
want the
include
friendly now?
condition, it does include condition number 21, but let's vote on the original motion to reconsider.
Okay?
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that carries unanimously. Then we would need a second motion if it's desired by the council to either include with modifications condition number 21 or to eliminate it altogether.
I would include, I move to include one modification to condition 21, and that is to make the width of the sidewalk 8 feet as opposed to 10 feet.
Is that clear with the council? We will go ahead and vote on that friendly amendment to condition number 21. All those in favor, please rate, excuse me? Oh, is there a second to the motion, excuse me?
I'll second, and if Mr. Hildner would yield to a question.
Seconded by Counselor Fury.
It's
Andy,
not a conditional second, but, so that would mean, so the sidewalk would be as originally designed, presented, one side, and then, but 8 feet wide,
Yes.
like that.
okay. Everyone clear with the friendly amendment to condition number 21?
So that means they're uniform? The two sides are uniform with that?
Yes.
Doug, is that clear with you?
There's, no, so just reducing it down to 8 foot, but one side only, 5 foot on the other side.
That is correct. That's the way I understand it. Yes, 5 feet on one side. I'm just thinking about tricycles and kids and that sort of thing.
All those in favor of the friendly amendment, please raise your hand to condition number 21. Those opposed, like sign. Did you vote in favor? And that vote carries unanimously, Michelle, for the amendment to condition number 21, which brings us...
Did you vote against it, Melissa?
What's that? I
No,
did.
Oh,
you did.
I did.
You did. So that was a vote of 3-1 with Councilor Hartman voting in opposition, Michelle. And then we'll need I believe, another motion to re-adopt the preliminary plat for the Mountain Brook subdivision, if I'm not mistaken. Andy,
I would move to approve WPP 19-09
there a
as
second?
amended.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Hennan. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Thanks for working through that. Thanks for coming tonight, Doug. And we'll start with councilor comments. And how about Richard tonight?
Sure. I have several, and I asked Michelle to put together a picture, and let's start with the Mackenzie River pizza picture. I had a constituent stop me to talk about where that white car is. Apparently, there used to be a handicapped parking spot in that location. With the reconstruction of the street, that disappeared, and the next handicapped parking accessible is across the street in front of the O'Shaughnessy Center. Can we see that one? Oh, there it is. No. That's okay. There it is. You see there's a car from Tennessee, speaking of parking, that's encroached into the handicapped parking space that is in front of the O'Shaughnessy. This constituent, she and her friends frequently go to Mackenzie Pizza and it's really inconvenient, she said, having lost that parking space that they used to be able to use. They're all have restricted or handicapped parking stickers. And I said I would bring this up. And it seems to me that if we moved it back to that slot by the Mackenzie River Pizza, we could make that then easily van accessible in that spot, and then give up the one in front of the O'Shaughnessy. So I would like, if I can get a nod from council, that have Craig look into that, because that's something that council has to approve, is our changes in parking. But it seemed to me that that was a reasonable request. Do you have any comment about that, Craig? Yes.
I don't believe it's possible to do a van accessible handy ADA stall as a parallel spot, because the van, the wheelchair would essentially be exiting into traffic. You know, the intention of a van, of an accessible stall is that you have an additional buffer space on one side of the vehicle or the other, and it has to be at grade. So it can't be the curbside, and if it's on the driver's side, then the wheelchair is coming out into traffic, which isn't safe. But I'm pretty sure when we did the new angled parking on the north side of Railway that we included one ADA stall. I'm just looking at the plans real quick, and if not,
I took a ride down through there on my bicycle, but I was probably going faster than the speed limit and didn't get a ticket. Anyway, if you could come back with something that either we can vote on or I can talk to the constituent about, that would be great. Is everybody okay with that?
I think so.
Okay.
Thanks, Craig.
So the other one is one I've brought up many times before. If you could bring me to the post office, please, Michelle. There it is. You'll see that there's a Sprinter van parked on the north side of 4th Street. You've got a pickup coming down the street. There is parking on both sides of the street. And when it wasn't fast enough to take the picture, but the truck that came around the corner headed west on 4th ate up half of that stop line. And I have, since I drive that frequently, we would lose if I'm going to have to point at the screen. If we could lose this parking space, and there is a minimal parking space just in front of it. The minimal parking space is between the parking lot of the credit union and the alley. So it's a loss, it would be a loss of 2 parking places, but I think it would improve safety, especially since that is getting increased pedestrian traffic crossing 4th Street, going north and south between downtown and the post office and Riverside Park. So again, it's one that I would like to have some future and further consideration of, and to bring it back to council as a possibility, if council's okay with that.
I find it a bit ironic that we just had a work session on downtown parking strategy, and I understand your point, but 2 parking spaces in that vicinity is actually fairly significant, given the fact that you have the post office, which oftentimes overflows onto 4th Street because of lack of parking, as well as the credit union building. Have there been any traffic incidences there, Chief Dial?
Not anything remarkable that I can think of.
In a sense, the narrower section is a sense of traffic calming, and people just need to take their time navigating the intersection, as far as I'm concerned.
I understand that concern. It's just the number of close calls that I have personally observed.
What about a pedestrian activated crossing?
Too many of those, and people are immune to them. That's the problem.
They are, okay. Anyway, I've said my piece, but.
I validate your concern, Richard, because when I turn onto O'Brien off of 2nd Street to the Riverside Plaza building, it's essentially with 2 people parked on either side. It almost feels like it's a 1 lane, and there have been some like close head-on. So I do appreciate your concern, but I'm just wondering how many of these situations we have in downtown, and then if we start, if we made changes here, how many more would we potentially need to reevaluate? And then I can also appreciate the loss of parking as well. So, it's kind of frightening because I've had some close calls too.
4th becomes the de facto bypass for the streetlight at O'Brien and 93.
We would need a showing of hands to have Craig look into this in greater detail, and/or a suggestion might be to have our consultants who we just met with in work session perhaps take a look at that intersection and see if there could be any improvements recommended as part of our draft study.
Still want a showing of hands?
Yes, please. And I guess we'll look into the parking issue there. Thanks, Craig.
I guess maybe to Melissa's point, and I can think of a number of places that I try and make a right-hand turn and I can barely see to the left because of the parking space that's close to the corner. I think Melissa's point is very well made, that they're all over town, and maybe that's something to look at in a broader perspective as opposed to a specific 2 spots.
I have one other. And this is a major departure for me. And I've written it out so I can stay on point. Recent tweets yesterday and today by the President of the United States prompt me to speak out personally and publicly against racism, sexism, and xenophobia. For me to do otherwise makes me complicit, and this I refuse to be. To this end, I reaffirm my commitment to the Whitefish non-discrimination ordinance and encourage others to do the same. We are a community where all are welcome, and I am proud to be a part of it.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate those comments. Anything further tonight?
No.
Thanks. Andy?
Nothing.
Thanks, Andy. Ryan?
No comment from me.
Thank you, Ryan. Melissa?
I will second Richard's comments about the recent presidential tweets. And I will also let people know on Wednesday night at 5:30 here at City Hall, there is a climate action plan meeting, which is open to the public. So please come and participate if you're interested.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. Our work session prompted a couple of questions I've been meaning to ask Adam or perhaps Dana. Our license plate recognition software, last we spoke, it really wasn't working too well. Where are we with that?
So I've been working with Genetech, who has the camera system,
Okay.
which connects to Park Mobile. So Park Mobile is operating as expected, which is the permit software. So our LPR license recognition, or license plate recognition software has had some issues, but we've made adjustments with the bollards in the center of the lanes. We're looking at putting some type of lane up on the top deck, going up into uncovered. But we've been in contact with them, told them some of the errors we're getting. I think we need to do some training with our parking enforcement personnel on the software itself, because it can actually be very user-friendly if we can get into both Park Mobile and look at the LPR reports. So we're addressing that. We know that we've invested a lot of funds into that, and we're going to make sure that system works.
Are we using it right now for enforcement and ticketing?
We are
Okay.
using it. We're just using it in a not as efficient way as possible. And they are coming up with errors that, sometimes it will read, we have a new one with new signs going up. We're actually getting reflections on the tops of trucks. So, it's just adjusting those cameras so that we're not getting a reflection of our parking sign onto a truck and it's saying that's the license plate. But there's, few errors that they're catching, but we are using it. It's just not used like with a handheld device, but we're looking at purchasing one so that our parking enforcement person can actually go on and look stuff up electronically, and we'll do some training with her as well.
Thanks, Dana. Speaking of parking garage, where are we with our lease spaces?
So I also looked at that today since I figured that would come up. We have 4 on the wait list for covered, and we have 28 uncovered available at this point.
20 uncovered?
28.
28 uncovered at $30 a month? Okay.
Correct.
Dana, today you emailed me about our microphones up here, and I thought I'd actually ask the folks that are using the microphones. I think the question was whether or not we wanted the ability to turn the microphones on or off. Do you like that ability, or would you like to do away with it to where your microphone's constantly live, was my impression.
Yeah, and I think Jake adjusts when they're live or not, but we would have to confirm with him in the back. But yeah, it would be whether or not you guys want the button anymore. If it's too much, we would be swapping between the two actually, so the push button would come here. The idea was that in discussions, staff usually knows when we're going to be addressed, so we can easily push the button. We know when we're going to actually prepare a report, whereas you guys are more on the spot discussions, so you don't have to like remember to push the button. It's just an option.
Status quo?
Status quo.
Turn on, turn off? Okay. Status quo, I guessed right. Finally, Adam, short-term VRBO enforcement. Can you give us a brief update on how the software is working, how the firm that we've retained is helping us with enforcement?
Yes, software is working great, just as intended. There's a few other I don't want to maybe call them sidecars, but there's a few other pieces of the software that they offer that now that we've kind of got the main portions down, we're branching into those areas of the software that's available to us. And so we think that's just going to further enhance things. I think it's doing really well. It's doing all that it's supposed to be doing. I think we're doing a great job on the enforcement side. I think one of the things we're kind of branching into now is letting people know what they can do if there's a problem. who do we report it to, where do we go to do that? And so that's some things we're working on both with our web pages on the website and then getting this new sidecar piece of that software to interface with that. That way, if people have a complaint or they want to report a property, that they'll be able to do so. Just go right online with a click, they can type in the information. So there's a few pieces of it we're trying to work more for our benefit, but as far as just enforcement, strictly enforcement of those that are coming on, we're catching them. There's a few that are pretty sneaky, but we're catching them.
Great. Well, thanks, Adam. Just a couple observations on July 4th. I found people were, I think, more respectful this year of our ordinance than any prior year. I live right above City Beach, so I'm kind of in the heart of the war zone, and it was respectful July 3rd. I barely heard any fireworks. July 4th, they were, cut off relatively early in the evening or early morning, and then July 5th, virtually non-existent. So I don't know if that's the fact that we're doing better with education and outreach, or that our ordinance is now taking more effect citywide, but I wanted to thank our visitors and residents alike for adhering to our local ordinance. And more importantly, though, I know that the demand down at City Beach is pretty, intense and demanding for our city staff. So I wanted to give a big shout out to the Parks Department, the beach rangers, and the other folks that were on duty and on call that night to handle the crowd down at July 4th. And then finally, related to that, I know the music event was a big hit this weekend. Apparently it went off very professionally with no big hitches. I know that Chief Page and Chief Dial were on point the entire weekend, as well as some overtime personnel, as well as emergency responders if and when the need arose. So I just wanted to give a big shout out to both departments and the folks that helped with that event this weekend. Big thanks. On that note, I have nothing further. Is there anything further from staff about the council? We are adjourned. Thanks.